The protagonist stands amidst an ancient town, declaring that one day he was reborn into this fantasy world. He looks around the unfamiliar scenery, beginning his new journey. The male lead excitedly gazes at the world of Asphalt, with its soaring dragons and brave adventurers. He exclaims that the magic here is just like in fairy tales. The blonde male lead reminisces about his childhood dream of becoming a hero, depicted through innocent drawings. Now, standing in this dreamlike world, he eagerly begins his second life. The short-haired girl appears utterly confused upon hearing the concept of bathing, admitting she'd never heard of it before. Behind her, another person quietly listens. The male lead dejectedly gnaws on a stale piece of bread by flickering candlelight. He disappointedly realizes that the reality of his new life is much harsher, with terrible food and poor hygiene. The male lead taps an object and is astonished to realize there's no electricity here. He holds an empty birdcage, comparing this civilization to the Middle Ages. The male lead lies on the bed, staring at the ceiling, contemplating the convenient world he once lived in. Beside him is the empty birdcage, evoking a sense of nostalgia. The male lead reaches out towards the star-filled night sky, dreamily wishing for the ideal world he'd always longed for. The male lead wakes up with a start, rubbing his eyes in confusion at the unfamiliar surroundings. He sits up, looks out the brightly lit window, and wonders where he is. The system reveals its special ability called Moon Gate. It explains that it allows him to travel through different dimensions. The system recounts that thanks to this power, he can go to worlds of dinosaurs or the future. And then one day, his footsteps stopped in a completely new place. The male lead stands stunned before the sign for Akane Village. He can't hide his surprise and wonders if he's truly in Japan. The male lead stares into the distance, pondering the 10 years that have passed and the impossibility of returning. Suddenly, a man's voice calls out, making him turn around with a start. The elderly man kindly asks the male lead questions upon seeing him standing there, looking unfamiliar. He enthusiastically invites him home for lunch, offering hot soba noodles. The elderly man comments on the bun-haired boy's way of eating noodles, then praises his Japanese and his attire. The boy looks at his reflection in the glass door, smiling meaningfully. The male lead notices his distinct physical appearance but is surprised that language can still be conveyed. He wonders if this communication ability is also a skill, as he begins his journey between two worlds. The system explains the rules of the Moon Gate. Only he is the sole living being who can pass through. However, it emphasizes that any inanimate object can be transported between worlds. The male lead considers using this ability for profit to improve his current deprived life. He is determined to earn money so he can at least comfortably visit a public bath. The male lead compares the enormous price difference of gold and goods between the two worlds. He realizes that spices and sweets in Asphalt are so expensive that one cake could be exchanged for an entire house. The male lead flashes a cunning smile as a bold business idea strikes him. He believes that reselling Japanese goods to the other world will help him earn a fortune. The old woman thanked the protagonist for his help and gave him a small gift. The young man happily accepted it, thrilled at the thought of soon having money to buy lots of sweets. The protagonist waved goodbye, secretly keeping the purpose of his sales in another world to himself. Meanwhile, the protagonist prepared to begin his plan with a determined gaze. Albert picked up the strange item and asked Alan about its origin. Afterwards, he turned to ask another merchant for his opinion on the possibility of selling it to the nobility. Alan confidently asserted that chocolate would captivate the nobility and sell exceptionally well. However, the protagonist appeared worried, as he had absolutely no connections with the upper class. Alan warned that selling directly to the nobility would attract unwanted attention and create animosity with other merchants. The protagonist listened, asking questions to understand the gravity of the issue. The person explained to the protagonist that sweets were an important diplomatic tool for the nobility. He advised hiring a representative merchant to manage production and avoid breaking unspoken rules. Tartaglia sat pensive, struggling internally with Albert's shop being too small. He yelled in his thoughts but ultimately had to accept the truth spoken by the other person. Alan sighed helplessly at the competition from the noble merchants. However, the protagonist unexpectedly changed his attitude and suggested selling another snack called umaibo. Albert asked Alan for his opinion on the merchant business. Just then, the proprietress appeared and joyfully exclaimed upon seeing both young men again. The old woman coincidentally met the protagonist and was curious about the package of snacks he was holding. The protagonist quickly denied being a merchant, saying he merely had a little interest. The protagonist persuaded Alan to let their group try their hand, despite Alan's apprehension. Alan agreed, while Alan grumbled about helping a rival but was secretly grateful. The customers cheered with delight as they enjoyed the new food, promising to recommend it to others. Meanwhile, Alan was reprimanded for selling goods in an unauthorized location. The protagonist stood stunned, staring at the out-of-stock sign. Disappointment was evident on his face as he realized he had arrived too late. Leo excitedly boasted about his business success thanks to the help of the mothers. He joked about becoming a chocolate billionaire, then thrust the rest into Ren's hand as a thank you gift. The protagonist quietly observed from behind. He inwardly assessed that Alan might actually be good at something. The protagonist relaxed in the hot spring, enjoying a rare moment of peace. Despite worrying about lacking documents and money, a glimmer of hope still flickered within him. The protagonist discussed the potential of Japanese goods with the salesgirl. Meanwhile, the protagonist pondered trading strategies and complex commercial rules while bathing. A stream of thoughts appeared in the void, indicating that the character still had many things to consider and worry about. The protagonist enjoyed a delicious glass of wine in the bustling bar after his bath. He marveled at this simple luxury and declared the wine here was the best. A bell rang, causing the room to suddenly fall silent. The protagonist and those around him looked at each other in bewilderment, not understanding what was happening. The appearance of the dark princess caused the townspeople to be abuzz with chatter. The male lead observed her and revealed that she was a transfer student from Japan. The system explained the difference between reincarnated individuals and transmigrators. He clarified that one retains memories of their past lives, while the other is suddenly transported to this world. The system presented the extraordinary powers of reincarnated individuals and transmigrators. Thanks to their physical and magical strength, they often choose to become adventurers or mages. The male lead marveled at a girl's beauty and asked his friends if they knew her. The long-haired girl nearby overheard, surprised as it was her first time seeing them in person. Everyone spoke of the long-haired leader and her all-female Moon Dawn Brigade. She was praised not only for her beauty but also for her exceptional monster-slaying talent. The male lead drank water, shivering slightly when mentioning that group. He admitted they were a bit intimidating but had earned the absolute trust of the nobility. The customer paid the bill and prepared to leave after just one glass of wine. The server expressed surprise at this regular customer's rare early departure. The male lead smiled, explaining that he had some personal matters to attend to. He stood at the door, ready to leave and execute his plan. The male lead held the comic book in his hand, curiously asking about its popularity. The cover depicted a male and female student with a romantic title about dreams. Kita excitedly confirmed this was the most popular manga, which he also read. The light-haired customer cheerfully replied, then asked Kita to fetch a women's fashion magazine for an acquaintance. The male lead paid for the book and left the store to the seller's farewell. Stepping outside, he secretly admitted that being asked to buy it was just a lie. The male lead stood under the night sky, speculating about the girl who was suddenly transported, just like him. He feared that interacting with the Dark Princess in such a situation was extremely perilous. The male lead sat tensely in front of the computer, praying that this large expenditure would be resolved smoothly. He appeared exhausted and placed all his hopes on the upcoming results. The male lead stood before a closed door with a reserved sign. He scratched his head in frustration, realizing this was truly a major obstacle to his plan. The male lead hesitated in front of the restaurant with completely drawn curtains. He worried that if he missed today, there would be no other chance, but waiting conspicuously could also ruin things. The male lead was stopped by the girl with pigtails right in front of the store. She demanded to know what he was doing blocking the entrance at night. The male lead explained that he was here to deliver something to the Dark Princess. The girl was surprised and amused, asking if she intended to meet the captain. The male lead pressed the item into the brown-haired girl's hand, saying it was free and she could discard it if she didn't like it. He vanished like a gust of wind, leaving the girl bewildered and unsure of what had happened. Aina sighed when the black-haired girl asked about the package in her hand. The girl explained that a suspicious person had given it to her and told her to deliver it to the captain. The girl with pigtails timidly handed the tablet to Kalkira. Kalkira bent down to sniff the item, inspecting it, preparing to give her assessment. The brown-haired girl received the box from the stranger and brought it to the black-haired captain. After considering the sender's instructions, she curiously asked the captain for permission to open it. The two girls were startled and amazed when they saw the strange books and magazines. The two girls couldn't hide their surprise when they realized they were books. The reddish-brown-haired girl mused about the rarity of the items and their connection to the captain. Hearing the word captain, the long-haired girl and the young girl beside her were both startled. Aina's face flushed crimson as she pressed to know who had delivered the package. The blonde girl standing behind watched her flustered friend with concern. The pursuers shouted to apprehend the fleeing girl, calling her the divine child. Elsewhere, the girl awoke in extreme confusion, unsure of her whereabouts. As the schoolgirl waited at the school gate, space was suddenly and violently distorted. She fell freely into chaotic darkness, desperately believing she was about to perish. A long-haired old woman called her awake. The elderly couple beside them sighed in relief and kindly asked if she was all right. The black-haired girl recoiled in alarm when she saw strangers in the room. The innkeeper quickly reassured her and explained that they had found her injured beneath the cliff. The injured girl recalled the moment she fell into the dark abyss. She emotionally expressed profound gratitude to the person who had saved her life, though that person humbly denied any credit. The adults remarked in astonishment that the girl had fallen from such a height and remained unharmed, worthy of being called a prodigy. Hearing that title, the girl merely pondered silently with a complex expression. The black-haired girl wondered about the meaning of the phrase, divine child. In response, the tea server explained that they were messengers of God from another world, and her jet-black hair was the clearest proof of that identity. The elderly couple revealed that the girl in black possessed special abilities which she herself seemed unaware of. At this unexpected information, she could only stand in silence, speechless. With her arm bandaged, the black-haired girl confessed that she was completely in the dark about everything, as it had all happened too suddenly for her to react. The blonde woman kindly advised the black-haired girl to put aside all thoughts and prioritize rest to regain her strength. Moved by this concern, the girl tearfully expressed her thanks while her eyes welled up with tears. The elderly couple bid farewell to the black-haired girl with deep gratitude and advice to take care of herself. In return for their kindness, the black-haired girl also wished them both peace before departing. With a gentle smile but eyes full of determination, the black-haired girl began her long journey to find her way back to her old world. Thanks to the power of the divine child and widespread rumors, the female swordswoman no longer had to fight alone as many people had gathered under her banner. Soon, the reputation of the Radiant Moon Brigade echoed throughout the land. Looking back at the journey so far, the black-haired protagonist felt truly fortunate to have such good comrades, people who had trusted and followed her without doubt or questioning her purpose. With a serene expression and half-closed eyes, the long-haired girl secretly hoped that one day in the future, she would have enough courage to tell everyone the whole truth. The wooden door creaked open, followed by the jingling sound of a bell, announcing someone had entered the room filled with large wooden crates. As soon as he entered, the protagonist held up the letter and questioned the bartender about whether he was the sender, but he only received a warm welcome from the bar. The protagonist turned to tell Zine to get a drink for the girl in the cloak standing beside him. Meanwhile, someone else left, reminding him to lock the door carefully. At the quiet bar, The black-haired girl and the protagonist sat with their backs turned, both immersed in thoughtful silence amidst the faint scent of alcohol. Seeing the black-haired girl seemed reserved, the protagonist quickly apologized, but she brushed it off, considering it just a normal conversation. When asked about her origins, she frankly admitted she was a person reborn from Japan. Alan introduced himself as an unemployed 20-year-old and then asked the other person's name. The girl replied that her name was Sayoji Shizuku, 18 years old, which made Alan seem to want to clarify something. Sayoji Shizuku pressed him for his true name in his previous life, and the protagonist calmly revealed that he was Shinjo Masato, an ordinary person who passed away at 25. Seeing the girl felt apologetic for being curious, he quickly reassured her that he didn't mind it at all. Sayoji Shizuku speculated that the young man might be from a different time period because he was completely unfamiliar with the name Sayoji. To the other person's surprise, the protagonist confusedly wondered if she had been a famous idol that everyone should know. While the protagonist lamented the changes of the times, the black-haired girl found it normal because her base still strongly bore the hallmarks of the Showa era. The atmosphere suddenly grew somber when the young man revealed that he had passed away 20 years ago. The protagonist bluntly crushed the black-haired girl's hopes by declaring that she could not return to Japan. Although she seemed to have vaguely anticipated it, the girl couldn't hide her utter shock at this harsh truth. With a face full of regret and disappointment, the protagonist explained that besides him, no other being could cross between worlds, meaning he had inadvertently instilled false hopes in the other person. The protagonist confidently asserted that he could find, purchase, and send the necessary items, an enticing offer. Hearing that, the other person silently tightened her grip on the glass of water, seemingly considering or suppressing her emotions. Seeing the other person's glass was empty, the protagonist politely offered more drinks. This offer surprised the girl, as the owner was not present, while her hand was still rummaging for something. With a radiant smile and a mischievous wink, the protagonist unexpectedly held up a bottle of green tea as a goodwill offering. Receiving the glass of tea from the protagonist, the girl took a sip and immediately noticed a distinct difference. The unfamiliar taste and aroma made her thoughtfully compare it to the tea she usually drank at home. Holding the glass of iced water in her hand, the black-haired girl blushed slightly from embarrassment but couldn't hide her satisfaction, exclaiming that the drink was truly delicious. Looking at the girl, the protagonist suddenly realized that no matter how reliable she appeared, she was still just a high school student, a fact he had inadvertently forgotten. The dark-haired girl bowed her head shyly, fearing she had revealed an embarrassing side in front of others. However, the protagonist calmly rested his chin on his hand, gently reassuring her that she had nothing to worry about. The protagonist enthusiastically recounted his first time eating soba noodles again after being reborn and offered to find that dish for the girl. Although her initial goal was to find clues to return to Japan, the black-clad girl still felt touched and happy by this simple thoughtfulness. The protagonist agreed to be her patron, in return for the other person preparing all the items he requested. However, when she left to write a letter, he worriedly cautioned her not to demand too much, as he didn't have a stable income. The black-haired girl tilted her head curiously, unexpectedly asking the other person if he had skills in organizing papers and documents. In the peaceful early morning, the black-haired girl woke up the other members. Despite still being sleepy, everyone gathered to hear her introduce a new character who was about to appear. The black-haired girl sternly introduced Alan as the new member joining the team today. In response, Alan smiled brightly and waved to everyone in a friendly manner. Recognizing the strange man from the other day, the girl with tied-up hair showed extreme indignation, causing the other members to turn and question their leader. Even though the leader affirmed he was trustworthy, Alan couldn't help but feel awkward standing before everyone's strong reactions. Despite her subordinates' concerns about accepting a man into the team, the female leader decided to assign the new member to manage supplies due to his calculation skills, rather than having him participate in combat. While Aina was assigned to guide the newcomer, he secretly speculated that this was Sayoji's true objective. The gray sky was disturbed by a flock of birds flying chaotically, and at the same time, a terrifying scream echoed, shattering the tranquility of the space. The protagonist admitted that although he had never thought he would join the brigade, all his efforts to attract the captain's attention were worthwhile. Meanwhile, the female members were also buzzing with chatter, having never seen the captain so lively. Holding the documents in hand, everyone couldn't hide their astonishment upon discovering that a man had joined the Moonlight Brigade, something they considered unprecedented. The girl with her hair in a bun casually handed the catalog to the protagonist, saying they needed more help. Holding the notebook, the young man broke out in a cold sweat, hesitantly asking again to confirm this ironic situation. The protagonist froze before the enormous pile of goods stacked like a mountain in the warehouse. He was even more shocked to learn that the small girl with 2 pigtails had been solely responsible for calculating the expenses for a group of 30 people all this time. With a tired expression, the orange-haired girl held a brush pen, preparing to inventory the warehouse, and sent the other person to buy supplies. She didn't forget to instruct him to use the squad's reputation to avoid being overcharged and to get the best prices from merchants. Before leaving, the protagonist turned and kindly advised the girl not to overwork herself. In response to his concern, the girl simply waved goodbye silently from the doorway. In the bustling square, the young merchant sighed wearily as he reflected on his current ironic situation. He had once thought trading with nobles would be easy, but he never expected to be drawn into joining the Dawn Moon Brigade like this. The protagonist told himself that he had to achieve concrete results to be recognized as an official member. As soon as that thought ended, he was startled to hear the name Alan being called out. The short-haired girl frankly questioned the young man about the rumor that he had joined the Dawn Moon Brigade, despite his surprised expression. This information also left the women standing nearby stunned and curious to verify the truth. The protagonist was utterly flustered to learn that the rumor of him having a job had spread everywhere thanks to the superfast gossip network. While he vehemently denied any connection with the Black Princess, the girls around him became even more excited, questioning him. Trying to quell the alarming rumors, the protagonist gave a wry smile and explained that the girl simply happened to like the item he had traded. He humbly claimed to be just an insignificant supporting character. Nothing special in this story. Alan was showered with congratulations and offers of cooperation from friends upon his debut as a merchant. However, before he could fully rejoice, he complained about being forced by the girls to run errands, and his name was called out again, making him tiredly wonder who it was this time. The protagonist was overwhelmed by the warm welcome and numerous enticing offers from the crowd of villagers. Overcome with emotion, he couldn't help but let out a shout of exhilaration and happiness under the vast sky. Hearing someone call from behind, Sayoji turned around in surprise. That person not only praised the protagonist for doing a great job, but also kindly asked if his recent shopping trip had gone smoothly. The protagonist appeared unexpectedly, left the invoice, and then knocked on the door to announce himself. Sayoji wondered why he had passed it through the narrow gap in the door, then carefully picked up the stack of papers to double-check them. Looking at the number on the paper, the male lead was startled, thinking he had overspent. However, when he learned it was a 20% discount thanks to Sayoji's connections, he became suspicious that she had used some underhanded tactics, which made her glare at him angrily. Both sighed in exasperation, the atmosphere heavy with worry. Sayoji turned away, confessing with a regretful voice that she had no intention of letting things go this far, while the male lead just listened in silence. Sayoji said she would give him some money and let him manage on his own. Stepping outside into the rustling wind, the male lead felt the inherent tranquility of Japan. At the same time, a hand in a black glove gently touched his head, blending with the chirping birds to create a peaceful moment. Holding the letter received from Sayoji, the male lead pondered deeply. He couldn't help but wonder if all the troubles could truly be resolved smoothly with just this thin piece of paper. The carriage rattled to a stop, bringing the group before the magnificent scenery of the imperial capital. The male lead gazed at the vast castle, which would be the next destination of their journey. After a long and arduous journey, Sayoji gathered everyone to commend the group's efforts. She loudly declared that starting today, the city of Lineberg would officially become their new base of operations. Holding the paper in her hand, Sayoji announced the good news that the team's shared house was ready. She reminded everyone to quickly check their private rooms to settle in. After Sayoji's firm confirmation, Sayoji turned to ask him about his upcoming plans. She wondered if Alan intended to return to Japan after completing his assigned task. Sayoji asked the male lead to handle a task, then turned and left, leaving him with a bewildered expression. However, after a moment of thought, he suddenly realized her true intention was to ask him to buy the second volume of her favorite manga. Amidst the peaceful scenery of the suburbs with birds chirping and cars parked along the road, the man in the suit strolled leisurely, enjoying the rare quiet atmosphere. While the elegant man was busy on the phone by his luxury car, butler Genji happily welcomed Alan's return. This commotion surprised the male lead, who didn't understand why everyone was so agitated. Seeing the group of strangers, the male lead curiously whispered, asking about their identities. When he learned they were people from the Sayoji Corporation who had been searching for him for a week, he was so stunned that he broke out in a cold sweat. Standing among the bushes, Sayoji wondered about the identity of the strangers. A mysterious voice reassured him, promising to mediate and revealing that those people had been looking for him for a long time. With a confused and sweaty face, the male lead hesitantly apologized to attract attention, seemingly in some awkward situation. The girl approached the male lead and confirmed if he was Alan. Upon receiving a nod, she gently invited him into the car to escape the oppressive heat outside. Taking a long drag from her cigarette, the wavy-haired girl complained about the difficulty of having to search for the other party. She also expressed annoyance that this remote place didn't even have anywhere to buy cigarettes for her to relieve stress. After the male lead's flustered apology, the girl confidently introduced herself as Kamiki Akira. The conversation became more tense when the man in the suit questioned Akira if everything originated from Sayoji's letter. With wide eyes of surprise, the male lead seemed to have found the crux of the problem. He firmly stated that the person opposite him must know a lot about that young lady to have such an attitude. Acting quickly and decisively, the agent subdued the target Kamiki and immediately reported via radio. He requested backup forces to arrive at the scene immediately to ensure the situation was completely under control. The protagonist appeared utterly terrified when confronted with a threat from a masked individual, who warned him that he would be left alone if he behaved himself. With a chillingly calm expression, the brown-haired girl issued a veiled threat regarding his physical integrity, while a grinding sound echoed, making the atmosphere incredibly tense. The car sped through the bustling city, and inside, someone asked Akira about the true identity of the Sayoji group. Seeing the protagonist still bewildered, Akira solemnly explained that the Sayoji group was a colossal empire operating in diverse sectors, from technology to real estate, both domestically and internationally. The system recalled the illustrious history of the Sayoji family, established by Ryugen, and affirmed the absolute loyalty of the Kamiki family, who had served the young lady since her childhood. Watching Akira enjoy her tea, she suddenly remembered 3 years ago, when she officially started working at the mansion and witnessed Akira's exceptional tea-making skills. As the maid bowed in solemn gratitude, the girl appeared flustered and embarrassed, suggesting there was no need for such formality when it was just the two of them. In a cheerful atmosphere, the dark-haired girl eagerly asked about the Koi program and received confident confirmation from her friend that it had been fully recorded. With blushing cheeks, the short-haired girl extended an invitation for her friend to stay and watch a movie tonight, receiving a gentle, doting agreement in return. Kamiki was concerned about the unusual commotion as the young lady was about to return, when suddenly a man burst in with grave news, leaving her stunned. The maid, with a distraught face, frantically announced the terrible news that young Lady Shizuku had vanished without a trace. The entire headquarters was in chaos as the commander bellowed questions at the security team, while the messenger rushed to report amidst panicked thoughts of an unacceptable error. While a mysterious figure departed with strange sounds, the orange-haired girl hurriedly checked the footage and was stunned to discover a crucial clue. In the control room, the black-haired man and the blonde girl were frozen in shock, staring at the screen, unable to believe that the target had vanished as if evaporated. The girl confessed that despite mobilizing search experts worldwide, it had been in vain, except for the clue from the protagonist before her, prompting the long-haired girl to apologize for concealing the truth. Outside the tall building under the blazing sun, a mysterious individual stood beside a car and declared that it was time to hear the story from the person opposite him. Standing before the unfamiliar building near Akane village, the protagonist couldn't hide his surprise, having never imagined finding such an establishment in this secluded place. A knock on the door broke the silence. The assistant informed Chairman Ryugen that the awaited young man had been brought. Alan appeared surprised when a stranger asked for his identity, but he still dutifully confirmed he was indeed the person they were looking for. The elegant gentleman smiled and remarked that he was exactly like the person described in his daughter's letter, leaving the young man flustered and his heart pounding with anxiety. The protagonist recoiled in alarm as the person opposite him approached with an overwhelming presence, wondering if everyone who worked at large corporations was so intimidating. Seeing the protagonist startled by the clap, the man in the suit chuckled reassuringly, stating he wasn't a kidnapper, leaving the young man to offer a strained smile to hide his fear. The man explained in detail the family cipher in the letter to prove it couldn't be forged, bringing an overwhelming surge of hope to the father that his daughter was still alive. When the young man asked how he had been found, the middle-aged man calmly explained, based on the postmark and his identity, and sadly recounted Shizuku's mysterious disappearance 3 years prior. In his most desperate moment, the father received a handwritten letter from his daughter, asking for his help with an important associate of hers. Faced with a direct question about what he knew, Alan could only remain silent, his face thoughtful as if weighing what to reveal. Addressing the protagonist's wariness about surveillance devices, the black-haired man asserted that the room was completely secure, except for a one-way mirror. As guns were drawn in the tense atmosphere, the protagonist unexpectedly activated a glowing ability from his hand, forcing everyone to lower their weapons immediately. The protagonist stunned everyone by revealing that the mysterious glowing gate that had just appeared was a product of his special ability. President Ryugen and his assistant were utterly bewildered to hear that this gate connected to another world, and that his daughter was right on the other side. The protagonist seriously explained the gate's strict rules, asserting that no other living creature besides himself could pass through it. With permission, the butler and staff cautiously touched the gate's strange surface to verify it, while the girl standing nearby couldn't hide her apprehension. The father was incredulous to hear that his daughter was leading an expedition team in a fantasy world, and that the young man before him was her subordinate. Admitting the story sounded like a fairy tale, Ryugen asked Alan to take a picture of his daughter with a smartphone as proof, but his awkwardness made Akira secretly amused. Though still skeptical of the young man's true motives, the man in the suit had to admit the undeniable authenticity of the letter he brought. With a trusting handshake, the middle-aged man expressed his deep gratitude and asked the young man to convey his regards to his beloved daughter. Sipping tea with an elegant demeanor, Sayoji gently asked the young man if he had met her father yet. Recalling the scene of the girl's father personally venturing to the countryside, followed by a noisy crowd, the protagonist couldn't hide his discomfort. The protagonist casually recounted how President Ryugen had given him a phone and asked for a picture as proof, and Sayoji nodded, understanding the situation. While someone asked to borrow something, the protagonist watched in surprise as Sayoji used a smartphone with astonishing proficiency. Shizuku watched the video intently, his expression turning serious as he heard the voice from the screen confirm that if he was watching this, it meant he was still alive. Looking at the man's image on the screen, sharp down to every detail, the characters couldn't help but marvel at the 4K resolution of modern technology and noticed a resemblance to their father. Sayoji blushed, clutching her phone emotionally, while the male lead smiled, teasing that peeking into private matters wasn't polite. Holding the phone in her hand, Sayoji looked around the hallway, bewildered, wondering where Alan had gone so she could return the item. The group of friends gathered just in time, chatting lively and curiously asking about the quality of the new and unusual smartphone. Sayoji, who had been sitting indifferently in a corner, was startled and surprised when the enthusiastic crew members called her name, inviting her to join them for a group photo. The young man enthusiastically gave instructions while holding the phone, and the group of beautiful girls immediately smiled brightly to capture the memorable moment together. Sitting by the window, the male lead became pensive when asked if he had truly integrated with the group. Faced with Sayoji's worry about not being able to fit in, the short-haired girl crossed her arms encouragingly, reminding him that adapting to a new base also takes time. The black-haired girl excitedly introduced the royal market to the male lead, a place where merchants from all over gathered with countless rare goods each week. The male lead advised the girl to temporarily set aside her exploration plans to visit the market, but he hesitated, wanting to ask her something important. With curiosity clearly visible on his face, the male lead wondered if the regulations here allowed anyone to freely open a stall. Even with the application form in hand, the male lead still scratched his head, pondering what kind of goods would be suitable to sell at the upcoming market fair. No sooner had Alan arrived than Camille stopped him, interrogating him intensely in the presence of Lazuli and Ryuka before he even had a chance to rest. Seeing the male lead flee in a panic, the girl in armor could only sigh, realizing that her presence had perhaps made the other person uncomfortable. The girl lowered her voice to comfort him, asserting confidently that no one in the current group harbored such negative thoughts anymore. In a flashback, the light-haired girl shyly confessed that no decent man had ever visited this place, leaving the young men astonished. The girl expressed relief and gratitude upon seeing the captain, who had always been troubled, recently find peace of mind again. As the leader welcomed the new member, the discussion about Alan took an interesting turn when the blonde girl exclaimed in agreement that he was just like a father. Caught engrossed in writing, the male lead honestly shared that he was filling out an application form with the intention of opening a stall at the market fair. The male lead shared his plan to test sell sweets to the nobility on a tight budget, making his friend beside him unable to hide their excitement and curiosity. The three girls huddled together, deep in thought, trying to find an answer to the difficult question of what items the nobility truly desired. In the quiet library, the dark-haired girl suddenly had a brilliant idea, while the clatter of her small friend reaching for books left the boy beside them bewildered. With a radiant smile, the short-haired girl excitedly held up the book in her hand, enthusiastically introducing it to everyone. The group of students excitedly discussed the romantic novel introduced by the captain, even looking forward to reading the sequel in Japanese. When she heard the boy explain that books were a luxury item difficult to acquire, the eager girl suddenly lowered her head, filled with disappointment and regret. With sparkling eyes full of determination, the three excited girls agreed on a plan to immediately stock up on the items they had just targeted. Joyful promises of a definite visit echoed, signaling a new journey about to begin in the bustling heart of the city. Stepping out of the elevator, worried if he would be trusted, the male lead was surprised to be warmly welcomed as if they had been waiting for him for a long time. With a professional demeanor and a gentle smile, Kamiki bowed formally, officially introducing himself as Alan's devoted attendant from this moment on. Just as the girl politely offered to lead the way, Alan unexpectedly slammed the door shut in front of her, making her startle and cry out his name in alarm. The male lead sighed in relief and apologized for the suddenness, but the curly-haired girl beside him could only complain why he couldn't speak frankly as he used to. The two-toned-haired girl felt a burden lifted from her heart, telling herself that his attitude proved he truly trusted her. The long-haired lady affirmed there was no longer any reason to doubt, while the male lead excitedly reported Ryugen-sama's satisfaction with the entirely new, mysterious shockstone ore. The mysterious person began to explain the promised support in sequence, preparing to hand over important financial benefits. The mysterious person successively handed over identification documents, arranged comfortable accommodation, and presented an unlimited black card, leaving the male lead stammering, utterly overwhelmed. As soon as the butler announced the enormous sum in the bank account, Alan was so shocked he froze on the spot, causing her to worry and inquire about his condition. The male lead clutched his head, lamenting that this treatment was excessive, but the girl opposite him immediately interrupted to present two conditions for the exchange. The first condition presented was that he must cooperate in researching the gate so they could thoroughly understand his power as well as the other world. The curly-haired girl emphasized the second and most important condition, which was that he must fully commit to supporting Lady Shizuku-sama. The bright-haired girl closed in with a menacing smile to confirm the cooperation, making the male lead tremble and bow his head in immediate agreement. After Alan swore promises in fear, the female guard cheerfully declared she would be responsible for his protection, but then hesitated, wanting to ask for a personal favor. While strolling past the shops on the street, the girl listened intently as the boy discussed the state of entertainment goods. The male lead confessed that even though he had the right to choose, he was completely clueless about the changes in modern Japan. The male lead explained his intention to build a network of connections in the unfamiliar imperial capital, making the accompanying girl wonder why he chose to start by opening a shop. When the lady offered unlimited financial support, the male lead calculated that gaining the favor of the nobility would help him stabilize his finances and contribute back to the brigade. The brown-haired girl asserted that she wanted to get rich through her own efforts, surprising the person opposite her, who praised Alan's unexpected seriousness. The male lead suddenly stopped in the middle of the street, making the accompanying girl turn curiously to ask what he intended to buy. The male lead exclaimed excitedly when he found the exact card packs he was looking for displayed in the glass cabinet. The male lead explained that the people of Asfiel were eager for entertainment, so simple card games would be easily accessible, while his companions seemed completely unfamiliar with this concept. The girl revealed that the corporation operated in multiple sectors, including entertainment, with a subsidiary specializing in card games, which surprised the male lead. The girl casually called to order an entire warehouse of cross-world items for immediate delivery, shocking the boy beside her so much that he had to exclaim her name. At the store, a brief exchange took place as the buyer confirmed that the amount of goods in the bag was just for trial. The male lead smiled and thanked his friend for her enthusiastic help, and the girl cheerfully replied that it was no big deal. The girl suggested they split up so she could buy books and sweets on her own, fearing she might be a bother, but was immediately and firmly refused by the other person. The male lead reluctantly entrusted his safety to the girl, and she confidently accepted, adding a serious warning that anything happening to him would also affect the young lady. Standing in the middle of the bustling street, the male lead was stunned and amazed to see the familiar girl's image appear on a giant advertising screen. The male lead remarked on the technological advancement as TVs became increasingly thin, making the brown-haired girl beside him look bewildered, not understanding what he was talking about. The male lead mused about the dizzying changes of the era and the development of video games, things he had never experienced while in Akane village. Looking at the screen, the male lead realized this was the famous game Yumkoi that Sayoji loved, and he couldn't help but be surprised by its popularity. Akira was lost in thought when he was suddenly startled by someone calling his name from behind. Holding the device, the male lead felt nostalgic and a little sad as he recalled the young lady's invitation to watch a movie together, a promise that would never come true. The girl quickly clarified that he had misunderstood her, making the disheveled-haired young man flustered and profusely apologize for his previous insensitive remark. The brown-haired student expressed regret at not meeting that person, but she also reminded the male lead that serving by someone's side isn't the sole meaning of life. After confirming the information, the woman tasked the young man with delivering the important item to the young lady, and he seriously accepted. The two debated how to prepare the entertainment devices. One wanted to integrate everything into a tablet for convenience, while the other worried and wanted to prepare extra quantities as backup. Watching the curly-haired girl engrossed in her phone beside him, the male lead secretly noted that she bore a strong resemblance to Sayuji's older sister. The short-haired girl was surprised by Alan's speed as he rushed to the location, then happily announced that she had secured the permit for the stall they had discussed earlier. The blonde-haired young man thanked her and sighed in relief that everything went smoothly, but when the other person asked about an item, he whispered that they would be brought later due to lack of space. While Ryuka wondered about the time, the group discussed coming in the evening with Camille, and a rather ill-natured person hoped that Alan's stall would have poor sales. When the male lead asked for the address of the store for nobles, the spiky-haired girl revealed it was 13 West Street, but he himself seemed surprised as he repeated the address. The two looked at the map and discussed the store's location, wondering why a spot near the central district was chosen, even though the West District already had many merchants. The girl explained that the central district was home to powerful nobles, separated by a city wall that commoners like them would never have the chance to access. The girl revealed that even though they lived in the central district, nobles who loved unique and unusual items would still secretly seek out this flea market. There was a buzz of discussion about a spreading rumor. They believed that if it were true, it would cause a major upheaval, even though it was currently just hearsay. The girl, astonished, questioned the other person's true intentions, but the male lead merely gave a smug smile and told her to let her imagination answer. The male lead didn't understand what was happening as the girl beside him suddenly burst into continuous, hearty laughter. The short-haired girl smiled with amusement, admitting that she found what just happened truly interesting. The brown-haired girl offered a compliment that made the male lead confused, thinking he was being teased. Then she happily concluded that she was really looking forward to that day. The male lead stood with his back turned, sensing something amiss in the air, just as a strange sound echoed nearby. The protagonist told himself that now it was only a matter of waiting for that fated day to arrive and calmly observing how everything would unfold. The market became bustling with firecrackers exploding in the sky, while vendors eagerly invited customers to high-quality mineral accessories. The protagonist smiled confidently, announcing that the Imperial Capital Fair had finally officially begun, and all preparations seemed complete. The protagonist arranged his goods, explaining that books were only for the chosen ones and chocolate was the main item, while the cards were just brought along on a whim. Observing the crowd gathering from early morning, the protagonist noticed the significant presence of the upper class, even though the main event wouldn't start until evening. The protagonist clenched his fists, determined to seize this opportunity, confident that the quality of his products would be on par with any high-end store nearby. The protagonist sat behind the counter, muttering about having to seize it, then fell into thoughtful silence as a small bird landed nearby. The protagonist stood alone in the quiet space, sighing as he realized no one had stopped by his stall. Seeing other stalls bustling with customers, the young man began to wonder anxiously if he was being avoided, lacked skills, or if his products were simply too peculiar. Albert suddenly appeared and asked why he looked so downcast, causing the young man to startle and exclaim his name. The man explained that he was just stopping by the market after a meeting, which made the protagonist surprised and ask why he was in the capital at this time. The pointy-eared young man grumbled, assuming the other person had come to mock him, but the man only expressed genuine surprise at seeing him truly become a merchant. When the protagonist asked for advice, the blonde man initially teased him about them being rivals, but then diligently advised him on the difficulty of selling unusual food without samples. The protagonist nodded in agreement when his partner suggested that next time they should open a store targeting the middle class, taking advantage of the weekly fair. The protagonist lamented about his studies, but his friend encouraged him not to give up and reminded him that reputation and quality were the core of a merchant. The protagonist tried to deny having criticized small shops but was immediately called out. In the end, he still smiled and thanked the customer as they prepared to leave. Before leaving, the dark-haired young man turned back to advise his friend that it would be good to find something else meaningful beyond his initial goal on this journey. The protagonist yawned tiredly, admitting that even though customers had stopped by, their feedback wasn't very positive. The protagonist was thinking about his dream of getting rich and was about to close early, when suddenly, the appearance of a mysterious figure made the entire group stunned as they recognized that person. The appearance of the eldest son of Marquis Castiano caused the crowd to buzz with chatter. Everyone was astonished, not understanding why such a prominent figure was present here. The protagonist nervously observed the disguised individual beginning to infiltrate the shops, and he immediately urged everyone to prepare for action. Realizing the rumors were indeed true, the protagonist couldn't help but swallow nervously and told himself to try and calm down. Castiano stopped before a stall with curious eyes, wondering what kind of items were being sold there. Tartaglia excitedly introduced Ether to the rare sweets, pastries, and toys in the shop, then invited him to taste the unique flavor of chocolate. Reprimanded by the High Knight for eating at a common shop, Castiano calmly stated that it was already done, but then awkwardly apologized when his hungry stomach unexpectedly rumbled. The protagonist enthusiastically explained the process of making chocolate from cocoa beans, making his friend beside him very surprised and eager to learn more. Recalling the advice that chocolate melts easily at body temperature, Castiano carefully held the outer wrapper and began to enjoy it. While the protagonist was wondering if the scent was too strong, he suddenly saw his round-haired friend stumble, about to fall, which also made the knight beside him panic. Faced with the wonderful taste of the dish, Castiano couldn't help but exclaim in surprise, but was immediately reminded about dining etiquette. Hearing the price of 30,000 gold for a pack of 8, Castiano was surprised by how cheap it was and immediately paid for all the goods, to the merchant's astonishment. The protagonist was flustered by the larger-than-expected amount. He happily introduced more about Conpito sugar candy, sparking the customer's curiosity to explore further. After hearing about caramel candy, the shopper showed great interest and continuously pointed to choose many different types of candy without hesitation. The blonde student excitedly recounted his shopping triumphs, while the protagonist stood rooted amidst a pile of money bags, having just spent millions of gold, with a dazed expression. Unable to hide his curiosity, Castiano leaned down to intently look at the paper bag on the counter and wondered what was inside. The protagonist enthusiastically introduced the trading card game, explaining in detail the rules for building a deck and how to compete to the listener. Faced with the blonde student's unhesitating decision to buy everything, the protagonist was both profusely grateful and secretly felt conflicted that the other party didn't suspect him at all. Holding the card in his hand, Castiano couldn't help but exclaim in admiration as he admired its exquisite and beautiful design. While his companion was content to buy souvenirs and the guards marveled at the item's quality, Castiano quietly focused on observing the device in his hand. The mysterious Castiano sincerely thanked him for the meaningful time and asked for the identity of the person opposite him. In response, Alan confidently introduced himself. Receiving the gifted item, Castiano happily waved goodbye and promised to meet the black-haired man again. Standing silently, looking towards the aristocratic district, the protagonist couldn't help but marvel at the impressive financial acumen of the elite here. The protagonist gazed thoughtfully at the two strange medals that had just been placed in his palm, wondering about their true origin and meaning. Alan was startled when the bright curly-haired girl and Camille rushed over, apologizing for being late. But their reunion joy was short-lived as the girl was stunned into silence upon discovering everything had sold out. Seeing his friends dejected for missing their favorite comic volume despite rushing to the store, the protagonist suddenly started as if remembering something important. The moment the protagonist presented Volume 3 of the Yum Koi series, both girls burst into extreme delight, their eyes shining brightly with happiness. The girl gently chided her friend for keeping it a secret, then happily suggested that everyone, including the captain, read the comic together when they returned. Under the night lamp, the protagonist was diligently writing, the silent space filled only with the scratching sound of his pen blending with strange buzzing noises. Seeing Sayoji still up late, the protagonist spoke up to check on her, startling her into bewilderment when she heard him call her name. The protagonist wondered why Sayoji wasn't joining everyone to read the comic and was out here instead. She calmly replied that she had just stepped out to get some water. With a serious expression, Sayoji frankly questioned him about his participation in the royal fair and whether any trouble had occurred. Faced with the protagonist's awkwardness when mentioning past events, Sayoji calmly suggested postponing the detailed explanation to another time. Sayoji frowned slightly, her gaze pensive as if sensing something unusual that had just arisen within her. The protagonist mused, recalling that his initial purpose in becoming a merchant was merely to earn money for himself. But the current gratitude of everyone made him feel confused and conflicted. A mysterious shadow unexpectedly placed a heavy gift on the table as a token of gratitude, startling the protagonist into amazement. When Sayoji calmly confirmed the matter, the protagonist panicked and broke into a sweat, fearing that she had heard the words he had just blurted out. The protagonist hesitantly opened the small box in his hand, only to be astonished to see a precious gemstone necklace inside. The protagonist's eyes were mesmerized by the radiant beauty of the necklace, sparkling with enchanting iridescent hues. Sayoji presented the precious gem as a magical conduit to express deep gratitude, asserting that it was thanks to him that she could reconnect with her family, regardless of his initial motives. The protagonist inadvertently commented that Sayoji was exactly like her father, Chairman Ryugen, which left her stunned and displeased, forcing him to hastily offer an apologetic smile. In a moment of thoughtful silence, the protagonist suddenly heard the long-haired individual's voice calling out, "Alan," from behind. Under the shimmering lights, Sayoji earnestly implored the male lead to take care of her father and Akira in her stead in the future. The male lead gently nodded, promising to do his best, while secretly noting in his heart the strange resemblance between the father and daughter. Closing her eyes with a peaceful expression, Sayoji sincerely thanked him and promised to cherish the gift, softly giving her consent. Walking lightly on her way home, the schoolgirl secretly recalled the interesting experiences at the recent fair with a joyful mood. Caught red-handed while secretly sneaking into town, the male lead quickly offered a box of chocolates as a bribe to appease his scowling friend. With a radiant smile on his face, the male lead waved goodbye and promised to meet again tomorrow before leaving. Standing silently before the sprawling street scene, the blonde schoolgirl clutched the box of chocolates in her hand and softly exclaimed in astonishment.
A glowing, circular object with a triangular symbol inside falls. Simultaneously, the male lead stands lost in thought amidst the sound of birdsong. The male lead looks forward with a serious expression, realizing it's the Promica medal. Unexpectedly encountering Camille, the cheerful braided blonde girl runs over to ask to see the medal again, explaining that she's on her break. Seeing this, the male lead also curiously asks if Camille knows about this item, and she seems to have recognized something. The friendly long-haired girl invites the group to have tea, making Mr. Allen regret missing the chance to ask more about the medal. Meanwhile, the bright-haired girl wonders why he doesn't know about his own item. Upon seeing the beautifully decorated cookie tray with various shapes like flowers, cats, and chessboards, a character couldn't hide their surprise and delight. The black-haired girl explains that these cookies are a thank-you gift from Mr. Allen after he asked her for advice about the market. As the children excitedly look at the animal-shaped cookies, Alan suddenly recognizes a cat shape and recalls that cats in this world are very aggressive. Amidst the peaceful afternoon tea atmosphere of the three girls, Alan feels completely out of place and awkward, while Camille and the long-haired girl are happily discussing the cute cat-shaped cookie. The long-haired girl shares that her market fair was surprisingly successful, as all the products were bought by a single person. Child unexpectedly reveals that he also received a medal from the same person, which greatly surprises Ether. When Sino curiously wants to see it, he bursts out laughing and vehemently denies Child's story, even though Child insists it's true. On the table are 2 Promica medals, 1 gold and 1 silver, which a character carefully observes and questions their origin. After a gloved person introduces the Promica badge used for entering and exiting dungeons, the male lead curiously asks about it. The long-haired girl then explains that it's an essential item for entering and exiting restricted areas. The two girls discuss the Promica badge, with the short-haired girl amazed to see the gold version for the first time, while Camille explains that it's not easy to obtain and requires recognition from the council. Camille explains that students with a silver Promica medal like her can enter the academy area, but can only choose schools whose symbols match their medal. After learning that Alan can freely enter and exit the Enfiver Academy of Magic, the short-haired girl speculates that the gold medal probably comes from the Central District. Hearing this, the long-haired girl advises her to ask the person who gave it to her at the academy directly. The male lead speculates that the medal is an invitation and feels uneasy about meeting the Marquis' heir alone. Seeing this, the long black-haired girl suggests that Camille, a former student, guide him because the campus is very large. The light blonde girl happily accepts to be his special guide, saying that she also owes the male lead a favor regarding Yumkoi, which makes him feel relieved and grateful for the assistance. Standing high above and admiring the vast city panorama, the male lead can't help but be astonished to learn that this is the academic district. The girl explains to the male lead that the academic district is the largest area in the capital, including academies and government research facilities. The male lead sighs in relief when the curly-haired girl arrives, admitting that he would almost certainly get lost without her. The blonde girl excitedly points the way to the checkpoint, while the male lead walks alongside, speculating about the cold gift in his bag and urging them both to hurry up. A bustling ancient city, from the scene of people gathered in the square, the encounter between a knight and a braided-haired young man, to the panoramic view of the grand bridge spanning the river. While exploring the new area, the girl expressed delight at the nostalgic scenery, while the male protagonist felt as if he had entered another world. They then discovered a large building which the male protagonist revealed to be the only Sandru religious school in the imperial capital. The male protagonist curiously asked about what was taught at the religious school, and the girl explained that subjects included medical techniques, divine arts, and especially healing magic which required specialized training. The girl revealed that Vice President Nana also graduated from the religious school, and the nun added that Nana was extremely rare for being able to use both healing magic and divine arts, her reputation even surpassing the captain's. The male protagonist expressed concern about not having had the chance to speak with the vice captains, but the girl reassured him. Meanwhile, the girl remarked that they should keep their distance from Raphine because she doesn't like men, though she secretly thought Raphine didn't truly mean it. Camille appeared extremely surprised when asked about the school she had attended. The male protagonist was surprised to learn that Lyethal Academy of Magic was merely a low-tier school for commoners, and he wondered if there was a class division in the magical education system. The girl explained that the education system was tiered based on inherited magical power, with nobles attending high-ranking academies. She emphasized that in 5 Academy, which they were about to visit, was a particularly elite school, leaving another young man astonished. The girl explained that the kingdom of Cainlees developed by strengthening powerful mage bloodlines, a concept that the orange-haired male protagonist found somewhat unrealistic, even though she was very excited to show him the kingdom's scenery. Upon arriving at In5 Academy of Magic, the male protagonist couldn't help but be amazed by the academy's immense and magnificent scale, like a castle. The male protagonist politely asked the guard if his companion could enter with him, even though he already had Promica. After the armored knight asked the male protagonist to show his right hand, a black-gloved hand suddenly glowed, indicating that a type of authentication magic was being activated. While the male protagonist was confused by a magical security item, the girl accompanying him seriously reminded him of the purpose of their trip and warned him to be careful if he didn't want the guards to apprehend him. Standing before a magnificent architectural structure, the girl couldn't help but be amazed and remarked that this place was completely different from Lyethal. The girl introduced the Lion Dormitory, an ancient and magnificent building traditionally reserved for royalty, causing the protagonist to exclaim in surprise. When the girl asked about the person they were about to meet, the male protagonist revealed it was Ray Castiano, an old client of his from the flea market. The male protagonist suddenly stopped and called Camille's name with a face full of surprise, making her confused and asked him to repeat what he had just said. The girl introduced Ray Castiano as the eldest son of Marquis Castiano, after which she fell into thought with her eyes closed. In the ancient street, Camille was running very fast when she was suddenly called by a surprised voice from behind. The girl struggled in panic as the male protagonist pulled her away, extremely worried about the consequences of a commoner like herself being associated with a powerful noble family like the Castianos. Realizing she had been deceived, the girl screamed in anger and despair, adamantly refusing to go along. While the girl was lost in gloom, the girl guided the male lead to Eagle Dormitory, reserved for the Castiano family, which left him a little bewildered. The male lead warned that Camille would be apprehended for not having a Promica for this area, and after she admitted it, he asked if he could leave, making Camille offer a forced smile. The girl was lost in anxious thought, feeling unworthy of meeting the Marquis' heir and believing her status was only suitable for a knight or a fallen baronial family. After the male lead apologized to Camille and promised to compensate her later, a butler welcomed Sir Alan and invited him to follow, while another man was asked to wait for Lord Ray in the room. A loud crash echoed, startling the male lead, while the girl remained silent. Elsewhere, the girl weakly reassured that she was fine after being asked. The girl's spirit momentarily detached from her body, startling both her and the male lead. She explained that she was fine but her spirit almost escaped, leaving the male lead utterly astonished. An unexpected event occurred, causing both the girl and the male lead to show expressions of extreme astonishment. A cheerful fellow greeted an acquaintance, recalling the past market fair, while he and his companion stood amidst a crowded area. The male lead politely thanked the long-haired blonde for the invitation, and was reassured by the person not to be nervous. However, as they began to move, he maintained a focused and vigilant expression. When the girl sternly inquired about someone's identity, the boy hesitantly replied that it was probably his friend. The male lead stood stunned with a bewildered and dazed expression, drops of sweat rolling down his forehead. The male lead was utterly terrified when a girl with glasses glared at him menacingly. He tried to call out to Camille for help, but she seemed powerless to assist. The girl gave the male lead a bag of exceptionally rare candies, explaining that they weren't usually available in stores, making the boy show surprise and curiosity. When the butler brought in the food, the blonde young master happily clapped his hands in welcome and was surprised by the lavish meal quickly laid out. Meanwhile, the male lead inspected the food and realized it had already been portioned. A beautiful fruit tart was presented, making the male lead extremely excited and exclaimed that it was like a precious gem. The giver felt relieved that the gift was well received. Amidst the contrasting reactions, the girl panicked upon realizing someone had passed away, while the male lead cheerfully suggested enjoying the cold items first. At the same time, the girl expressed concern for the condition of the other person. Ray Castiano smiled and introduced himself, stating that he was a first-year middle school student at this academy. After introducing the person next to him as his cousin, Chris Elisa, the male lead was immersed in extreme delight, secretly thinking that the food before him was the best he had ever tasted and all his efforts were worthwhile. Amidst the tense conversation, as the girl directly questioned the male lead's change, the male lead was astonished by their audacity to speak in such a manner to the heir of a Marquis family. The girl accused Chris of lying and having another name, which made her fall into silent contemplation, seemingly thinking or worried. The boy explained that as a noble, he had both a given name and a surname, whereas commoners only had a given name. This left the male lead utterly confused about the concept of another name. The male lead couldn't believe his ears when a mysterious person revealed that Chris still had another name. Chris Elisa Kane Lee's royal identity was clarified. She appeared with a solemn and impressive demeanor in her role as the kingdom's princess. With a pensive and emotional expression, the girl pondered the two words royal family, suggesting a strong connection or deep feelings. The male lead was extremely shocked and worried upon hearing the name Chris Elisa Kane Lee's. He realized she was the country's second princess and couldn't understand why she was here. The boy revealed that Chris's father came from a family with a magical power level equivalent to the Castiano house and had married into the royal family, which gave Chris the right to succession, even if only from a branch family. A man explained that she was the awakened one from the royal lineage, possessing a magical power far superior to even previous kings, causing the male lead to exclaim in astonishment. The boy explained about those who possessed great magical power regardless of their lineage, and the male lead curiously asked if such individuals existed even among commoners. The boy smiled and said that the male lead was also like those who possessed great magical power, which utterly surprised him. The girl pondered the concept of the awakened according to the Zane cult, wondering about their true nature. The male lead was lost in thought, realizing that the awakened ones possessed awareness far beyond ordinary people and admitting that he had made an unreasonable request to allow someone to meet Chris. The male lead realized that today's events might have been pre-arranged. He speculated that the princess could also be a reincarnated individual, which made him more cautious in his words and actions. While the male lead was worried about how to deal with the nobility, Ray called his name, interrupting his train of thought. The girl argued that someone was in trouble due to false accusations and that being an awakened one didn't make them special, but the short-haired boy seemed eager to refute her. The girl questioned the influence of reincarnated individuals, believing that even the strongest among them were only at the Viscount level, and wondered if she was misinterpreting the situation. The male lead was lost in thought while the girl gazed into the distance. With a gentle smile, the boy nodded and admitted that the other person was correct. The male lead remarked that they don't seem like children at all, while the boy had complex internal reactions, playfully asking if he had scared anyone, then confusedly denying it. The boy expressed his desire to regularly purchase products from the baker, then shifted to another matter for discussion, causing the male lead to ask again in surprise. The male lead expressed his gratitude and offered to support the young man and his brigade. The young man hesitantly expressed a desire to confirm with the captain before acting, but the male lead reassured him that he would handle the paperwork for him. After the young man in uniform bid farewell and sent his regards to the captain, Camille suddenly looked dizzy as she stepped through the door, causing a companion to anxiously call her name. Seeing the girl unwell, the male lead became very worried. The girl decided to go outside for some fresh air, leaving the young man alone, wondering about her condition. The male lead entered the living room where the girl was sitting alone, and both expressed a desire to speak with each other. The male lead felt extremely anxious and uneasy facing the princess in silence, feeling as though she was still glaring at him. The girl unexpectedly asked the male lead to lift her hair, surprising him and making him ask for clarification. As the male lead bewilderedly lifted her hair and asked if that was right, the servant nearby was utterly astonished and called out, "Your Highness." A girl was extremely excited, shouting "Hakubakuin" from a game, while a male lead looked at her with a bewildered expression. The girl tried to lift the male lead's bangs but was stopped by him. Then, she excitedly compared the male lead to someone named Hakubakyun, leaving the male lead utterly confused. The girl excitedly introduced Hakuba Issei, a character from the game Wonder Stage, and declared that he was her idol. The girl excitedly declared that the male lead not only resembled but was the very embodiment of a game character, surprising him and making him ask if he truly looked like that person. The girl exhaustively compared the male lead to someone named Hakubakyun, from his height, blonde hair, emerald eyes, to his deep, warm voice, making the young girl herself extremely embarrassed. The girl reminisced about an event that occurred a few years prior, a moment that marked the beginning of a journey she considered incredibly worthwhile. Sakakibara Yui, a second-year university student, excitedly showed off the Ida bag she had made herself for next week's concert, showcasing a fan's pride and dedication. The girl discovered her idol Hakubakyun's new gacha event but found herself in a predicament, having spent all her money on the live performance, forcing her to choose between working extra shifts and grinding in the game. Yui's friend remarked that Yui was as naive as ever when she told her to forget about university, and the friend seemed to be pondering that reaction. The girl expressed concern upon seeing her friend eating a bento box filled only with bean sprouts to save money, while on the other side, the girl generously shared her fried chicken. The girl recounted her former frugal life, where she dedicated everything to her idol, but that life abruptly ended, causing her to wake up in a shocking situation. A mysterious voice declared that it had sacrificed Hakubakyun's existence to gain wealth, power, and beauty, leaving the male lead shocked and worried. The girl was sobbing, recalling her painful past and saying that Hakubakyun now only lives in her heart, hinting at a great loss in the past. The male lead expressed understanding for the difficulties the girl had endured. Though still trembling, the girl reassured herself that everything was fine now. As the girl speculated that meeting Hakubakyun was destiny, the male lead suddenly appeared and unhappily denied being that person. While walking, the male lead accidentally bumped into the blonde schoolgirl, causing him to unexpectedly tumble to the ground. After the sudden collision, the male lead cried out in pain, while a flashback showed the tall girl standing with her back turned, implying she was responsible for the incident. The girl suddenly shifted into an extremely excited state with swirling eyes and drooling, making the boy wonder in alarm if her weird switch had just been flipped. The princess appeared very annoyed and surprised by her attendant's strength when restrained, while the attendant calmly asserted confidence in resolving all rumors. A mischievous little girl tied up a boy in a soundproof room, despite his panicked and futile cries for help. The girl confidently declared her training course was perfect and demanded the male lead stop resisting, telling him to just count the stains on the ceiling and everything would be over, leaving him only able to groan in misery. The braided girl peeked into the room and was astonished to see a girl pinning someone else down on a chair, a sight that made her feel dizzy. Amidst cries of surprise and chaotic crashing sounds, Camille bowed her head to the table and sincerely apologized, indicating she might be the cause of the commotion. While a boy trembled, holding the unconscious girl tightly and silently thanked Camille for her help, another girl was utterly flustered and embarrassed for having lost her composure in front of her idol. The male lead was told about his transmigration or transfer to this place. After that, she ordered him not to use honorifics, making the male lead awkwardly accept. Sakakibara Yui explained that she believed she had been possessed, as only her consciousness was transferred to this world and now linked with someone named Chris, creating a fusion in her identity. The girl explained that her current personality was a combination of two consciousnesses, which confused the male lead and made him wonder if she had two personalities. The girl proudly declared herself the strongest otaku girl in the kingdom, surprising the male lead, who confessed it was his first time meeting someone like himself. The male lead was lost in thought about his isolated past and his poor communication skills, while also considering the possibility of encountering another awakened one, especially if they came from the same place as him. After a long conversation, the girl said goodbye, while the male lead, looking sleepy, held a child who was sound asleep. Hakuba promised to support the girl's brigade and expressed a desire to speak with her as a fellow Japanese person in the future, and the girl happily accepted that promise. In a quiet moment, the girl slowly woke up, her eyes gently fluttering open. The girl woke up in unfamiliar surroundings, dazedly asking where she was as the male lead helped her up and welcomed her back to consciousness. The girl rubbed her eyes as she woke up, replying that she was fine, and recalled meeting Lord Ray and the princess. The girl suddenly remembered the event involving the princess and Alan, while the male lead, whom she was clinging to, looked dejected, secretly thinking that she still hadn't forgotten about it. The braided-haired girl mentioned that the spiky-haired male lead had a strange dream after passing out and apologized for deceiving him. However, he insisted that it couldn't have happened. Meanwhile, a mischievous pigtail-haired girl tugged on the male lead's hair. The tall girl smiled brightly, offering a book as a sincere apology. The girl refused to walk on her own, busy reading a book, stating that if she didn't read, she might collapse again, much to the surprise and annoyance of the male lead who was carrying her on his back. The male lead secretly thought that Camille was his benefactor and that this price was insignificant. A mysterious person overheard and questioned him, causing him to fall into a pensive expression. As Alan was resting peacefully, a little girl came to inform him that the captain wanted to see him, which surprised him a little, but he still accepted. With a serious expression, the girl questioned an unknown figure about the actions they had just committed. The male lead was extremely surprised to read the names Chris Elisa Kane-Lees and Ray Castiano on some documents. The male lead presented supporting evidence from the second princess and the Marquis family, and when the black-haired girl asked if he was responsible, he simply replied that it was a long story. The girl angrily blamed the male lead for ruining her plans, leaving him confused and wondering if he had truly interfered. The girl expressed gratitude despite having previously refused something. Afterwards, the male lead asked if she knew why they had paused their adventurer work, but he himself didn't know the answer. Amidst stacks of documents, the girl pondered the challenges of building a business, realizing the importance of connections, supply chains, skilled blacksmiths, and personal reputation. The male lead was concerned about the Brigade's capabilities, while the black-haired female knight revealed her deep understanding of discrimination against women in the imperial capital and negative experiences with the nobility. The gentleman with the goatee sat in an armchair, holding an object in his hand and thoughtfully asking if the person opposite him was requesting his support. The girl proposed sharing the profits from the operations, and when the girl asked about her share, it prompted her to explain in more detail. The middle-aged man refused the money, stating that he wanted something else, causing the girl to confusedly ask what he meant. The girl silently pondered after the middle-aged man made a bold offer, asking her to become his special companion or choose one of her beautiful female members. As the male lead surprisingly called out, "Lapine," the male lead beside him angrily shouted, "You scoundrel," as a loud noise echoed nearby. The dark-haired girl firmly refused any attempts to buy or sell herself or her companions, while the other girl appeared flustered and pleaded for them to forget the incident ever happened. As the two women departed, the man behind them expressed his annoyance, calling them presumptuous women. The dark-haired girl sadly shared that this was the first time she and her companions had been publicly ridiculed like this, which horrified the male lead. The two girls discussed a problem that frequently occurred not only in the imperial capital. The dark-haired girl then showed resignation, remarking, "Men are all the same." After commenting on the difficulties faced by the all-female group, the dark-haired girl expressed regret for complaining too much, especially with people like the male lead present. The dark-haired girl revealed that Alex Barn, president of Barn Company, was not a noble despite his surname, but was connected to a struggling knightly family. The male lead listened intently to information about a transport business operator and received advice to be extremely cautious. The male lead worried when he saw dark circles under the dark-haired woman's eyes and advised her to rest, to which she wearily agreed. Amidst the quiet space of two tall stacks of books, a dark-haired girl sat intently writing, with only the chirping of birds and the sound of something heavy being placed down breaking the silence. Just as someone remarked that they no longer needed to seek connections, the dark-haired girl exclaimed in surprise and called out loudly, "Captain," as loud noises rang out, leaving the male lead bewildered. The girl with the bun surprisingly revealed that many people wanted to meet someone, which pleased the male lead, while the girl incredulously uttered Alan's name. A man announced that they had received support from the Marquis and the second princess thanks to Alan, leaving the girl with two braids speechless with shock. The male lead was utterly bewildered and couldn't believe the situation, while the other person hesitantly explained that everything happened entirely by chance, but was immediately met with deep suspicion. The dark-haired knightess demanded that Alan explain everything clearly later, while assigning Aina the task of receiving the guests. Meanwhile, a young girl was secretly observing the situation from behind the door. A sudden event left the male lead in a state of shock and bewilderment. He exclaimed that he never expected things to unfold this way. The dark-haired girl looked out the window, thinking that everyone was interested in her connection to Princess Chris, who rarely appeared in public. Someone expressed satisfaction that the current situation was favorable, allowing them to quickly establish a base of operations, and mentioned that they would need others' help as their adventuring activities continued. The person in black suggested that the male lead become the exclusive merchant for the team, explaining that they wanted to sell monster materials without going through the guild to avoid losing commission on large orders. The purple-haired girl decided that they would maintain the current situation, as she realized her team was still lacking in manpower and experience. The girl pledged to ensure sufficient manpower, and although the orange-haired man worried about her workload, she reassured him that she was happy to be busy, which relieved him. Alan seemed a bit surprised and thoughtful when someone called his name. The girl repeated an adventurer's words about feeling strange being thanked for doing something for oneself, and he confirmed that for him, it was simply work. The black-haired protagonist explained that his priorities had shifted. Instead of returning to his old world, he now focused on what was in front of him and the people who were by his side. After being asked to assist Aina, the protagonist agreed and expressed a desire to learn from her. However, after completing the task, both looked utterly exhausted. The girl asserted that she had told him everything, but she felt the protagonist was still holding back information. Despite being tired from entertaining guests every day, the girl was happy that the negotiations were progressing smoothly. The protagonist and the braided-haired girl discussed their work progress, having narrowed down the list of potential trading companies. The braided-haired girl announced that the regular team leader meeting would take place next month and was optimistic they would be ready in time. The girl expressed her anxiety, as this was her first time attending such an event, and the protagonist asked again to confirm. The protagonist explained that he was previously exempt from supply team duties because he was the only one and couldn't handle everything, which made the black-haired girl show understanding. The protagonist inquired about the dark-haired girl's calculation abilities, which she hesitantly admitted to. She then offered to handle the accounting documents, and he revealed that he actually received assistance from someone else. The girl entrusted something to the protagonist before leaving, and he agreed while closing the door. With a focused expression, the protagonist prepared to act, stating that in times like these, he would use a special ability. The young man happily used the computer, silently thanking the convenience of modern technology that made his work easier. While reviewing a spreadsheet, the young man noticed an unusual expense item. He thought about the effort required to set it up and silently credited Akira-san for half of that work. Sitting in front of the computer, the protagonist pondered the maintenance costs for various medicines. The protagonist initiated the topic of medicine and explained that he frequently traveled to Japan not only to source supplies but also to share information and support research on the teleportation gate. The sorcerer explained that they were researching magical energy using materials from another world, but also pointed out the difficulties in maintaining the gate and its limitations on using other spells. Looking at his phone, the protagonist thought about having brought herbs and medicines, and also considered listening to the other party's opinion. The protagonist was constantly surprised by the sudden appearances of other characters, from Akira to a girl, making him feel bewildered and fearful as if he were being watched. At Leaf Institute, Sayuji Corporation's top-secret research facility, Plant Research Department head Yoshida smiled as he welcomed Alan, stating that they had been waiting for him for a long time. The protagonist apologized for the sudden intrusion, but the dark-haired young man replied that it was perfect timing as he was also about to announce some new information. A male student explained that the medicine works by penetrating cell membranes, activating nuclei, and promoting proliferation, thereby helping to restore damaged areas and accelerate healing. After explaining the wound healing mechanism, the bespectacled professor revealed that the genetic information of the herbs used as ingredients was not significantly different from plants on Earth. The protagonist deduced that the power of a certain plant was insufficient to significantly affect the human body, and he was trying to find another explanation. The young man with glasses explained that magical energy was related to a certain issue. He also revealed that he had suspected the protagonist's extraordinary physical abilities from his medical test results, as he broke numerous world records. The scientist explained that a live plant they brought through the gate had halved in effectiveness. He then revealed that they had successfully cultivated some herbs, greatly surprising the young man. The protagonist pondered the difficulty in cultivating a special plant, and suggested that the cause was most likely due to the scarcity of mana in the current environment. The protagonist thought it was reasonable for a plant to be difficult to grow since it was already rare in the other world, but the doctor was curious about the opposite possibility. After thinking about the possibility of plants retaining magic, the professor asked a student to guide the protagonist, giving him a feeling he had experienced this before. A cheerful female guide welcomed and directed a group of 3 to the IRD laboratory, announcing their arrival. The female researcher explained to the protagonist about earth plants with genetic characteristics similar to herbs from the other world. She then asked him to try infusing magic into a plant, and though hesitant, he complied, causing one of the plants to glow. Although the group expressed disappointment at not being able to see anything with the naked eye, the protagonist asserted that he had felt something, and all hope now rested on the test results. The research staff thanked the protagonist for his cooperation and informed him that they might need him to use magic again as mana could dissipate. Hearing this, he agreed and expressed that he also had something to ask. As she flipped through financial reports, the girl looked very anxious. Seeing this, the protagonist curiously asked if regular meetings were truly that strict. The girl expressed her anxiety, stating it was her first time experiencing something like this, and though the protagonist tried to reassure her, he admitted he was quite nervous himself. The dark-haired girl expressed that she had been wondering about something for quite some time. When asked by an unidentified person about the item he was holding, the curly-haired protagonist simply replied that he would explain everything later. The dark-haired girl questioned the protagonist about never clearly explaining things, while he awkwardly asserted that he had done his best. The protagonist reassured the girl that he had a plan for the brigade and told her not to worry. After a moment of contemplation, the girl was surprised when a mysterious figure remarked that she had changed, making her wonder what the other person was referring to. In a meeting, Vice Captain Lapine announced that information about the dungeons near the royal capital had been fully gathered and the teams would begin conquering them in 2 days. The male lead announced that it was the mage's team's turn, causing the girl next to him to immediately freeze and stiffen in surprise.